voice, your future. WPDE ABC 15 News presents the South Carolina House District 106 debate. And now your moderator, Tim McGinnis.
Hey, thanks for joining us. Nelson Hardwick resigned from office in May, leaving the South Carolina District 106 House seat up for grabs. District 106 covers many parts of the South Strand, including the Burgess community, Surfside Beach, Garden City, many other areas down there. There are 4 candidates running for the seat. Tyler Servant was unable to be here today due to a death in the family. The candidates who are here are Russell Fry, Sanford Cox Graves, and Dr. Roy Sprinkle. Gentlemen, thank you for being here today. I think it's going to be a fairly fun discussion. I don't want to throw a huge time barrier on us because I'd like to be able to explore some issues maybe a little bit more in depth, as much as you'd like to. So instead of putting a set time limit, I just ask that we keep things to around 2 minutes. I'm not going to put a hook out or start playing music to escort you off the stage if we go too long. If you get to 3 minutes, I might just say, hey, in the interest of being able to get to everything, let's move along. So having said that, we will start off with opening statements. If time allows, we will have closing statements. First off, with their opening statement is Dr. Roy Sprinkle. We'll move from you down in the answering order. So let's start with you. Dr. Roy Sprinkle.
Thanks for the opportunity to be here, Tim. As stated, we are all sitting here to try to tell y'all what we think is best for our district. I got to tell you, I'm sitting next to 2 very learned individuals, and I respect them both for their knowledge and for the stamina to be here today. Myself, I'm here because I guess I'll just want to say that I'm sick and tired of politics as usual, government as usual. A lot of us are. I have come to realize the level of apathy that is present out there. I share the apathy because of the level of distrust that all of us have in government and governments taking control of our life in every facet of our imagination anymore, from the federal level to the state level to the county level to the city level. I have no political history. I have no political aspirations. I'm just a poor little podiatrist. Moved here 20 years ago because I wanted to move here. And I think we're living in one of the best parts of the state. I want to continue to live here. Over the last 20 years, I've met a lot of nice folks, and a lot of those nice folks are the ones that kind of lit the fire under me to encourage me to do this, Tim. So I'll turn it back to you.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Roy Sprinkle. Sanford Cox Graves, your turn for some opening statements.
Thank you very much. I believe that I'm joining with Dr. Sprinkle in saying that we do live in one of the best areas of the state. We live in one of the best areas of the country and in the world. And there's things that are very good about the area that we need to protect and promote. And there's things that we can improve on. I believe that with our experience and with very thoughtful and forward-looking efforts, we can make South Carolina a very nice place to grow up and live, and have our specific area, and in this case District 106, grow along with that. The opportunities for a global environment, both with business, with industry, and with transportation are very close, and we can have those things and we can grow. I had to when I was growing up, I had to move away from this area to get experience in business and large business, and I want my children to be able to stay here and to get experience and to grow locally and not have to go off. I'm looking forward to this debate. I'm looking forward to continuing this race, and I applaud my competitors for putting themselves forward. I think that we all need to keep in mind that it's what's in the best interest of District 106, and not necessarily me as an individual or them as individuals. We are looking for the best candidate that can help our area grow and prosper and continue to be a great place. Thank you, Tim.
Thank you, Sanford Cox Graves. Russell Fry.
Thank you, Tim. I'm a resident of the Burgess community. I'm originally from Surfside Beach, and I live here in the area. I grew up in a cinder block house. We had no heat. We didn't have any air conditioning. And I watched from a very early age my parents struggle to provide for me and my two brothers. That is the prism from which I view the world, that through hard work and dedication and a little bit of determination, that you can make something of yourself, that you're not, that the cards that you're dealt are not permanent, and that you can rise up and a rising tide lifts all boats, so to speak. I went to Socastee High School, largely through scholarships, went to the University of South Carolina, and through jobs and student loans, put myself through law school. I'm a practicing lawyer here. I have been involved in the Republican Party here, championing conservative causes from a very early age. I believe in the platform. I believe in the movement, and I think that with good leadership in the House, we can make South Carolina a very prosperous state for all individuals. There are numerous issues that face District 106 that we need to address, and we need sound leadership, accessible conservative leadership in the State House to address them. Namely, infrastructure development. We are always playing catch up, it seems, with infrastructure. And on the South Strand, where we have the most highly concentrated population in the county, we are faced with road construction and log jams and everything. And it seems like we're always playing catch up and not actually forward thinking enough to develop projects to get our infrastructure sound. We need a cell project. We need a Southern Evacuation Lifeline to get across the waterway. Those are vital to the South Strand for business, for our residents to commute around easily, and they're vital for public safety. Our schools are in disrepair. We've been trying the same thing for 60 years, and it's time to do something different. We need to have real school choice in schools and empower parents to give their children the best education possible. And finally, the economy and jobs. I mean, politicians can't create jobs, but what they can do is provide an environment from which business can succeed. And I don't think that the state is doing that right now. I think there's a lot of things that we can do to help the little guy out, open up a mechanic shop, or the lady down the road who wants to become a hairdresser. Those are important and something that I think that we need to focus on a state level, and something that will certainly help out District 106. Thank you, Tim.
All right, Russell Fry, thank you. Gentlemen, thank you for your opening statements. We're going to be talking about a lot of the issues the three of you brought up. Again, no time, set time limits on your answers. I ask you to stick to around 2 minutes. If you go a little over, that's okay. One other thing I want to bring up, let the people at home know about, if you mention another candidate by name, I will give that other candidate an opportunity to respond, whether by inference or if you think that you've been referenced, then we'll do that. But hopefully we'll all play nice today. First question for you, and you just touched on this, Russell. I want to talk about infrastructure. A study came out, $1 billion a year over 20 years is what it's going to take to get our roads to good shape. Our legislature this year so far hasn't been able to pass a roads bill. There's been talk about raising the gas tax. So I want to know what your plan is, what you would be willing to do in Columbia to get our roads repaired. And I'd like you to answer in that yes or no to a gas tax increase. Russell, we'll start with you.
Okay, thank you, Tim. My initial reaction to any tax increase as a conservative is no. I think that there is room in the budget that we can provide for adequate funding. South Carolina had a $400 million surplus this year. Most of that money went to roads. There are a lot of alternatives that we can explore. We seem to be in a 20th century type of government, but we're moving into the 21st century, and it's time that government reform itself to be smarter and more efficient. And those are ways that I hope to provide in Columbia if elected. As to the gas tax, I'm not for a gas tax. If we look at the budget itself, there's ample money to provide for road construction projects in there. We need to work with our federal delegation and work with our county councilmen, and through my experience with the party, I know most of those folks, and it's going to take a lot of working together to get the job done, but there's money in the budget. But the last answer before anything is a tax increase.
All right. And Sanford Cox Graves, the same question for you. What does it take to fix the roads, and include in your answer where you stand on a gas tax increase?
Thank you. Obviously, any time that a tax increase is considered, it is of the highest and utmost priority. The individuals that provide that money are the public, and they are the voters, and they are the businesses that bring us lifeblood. So every dollar you take away from those individuals is dollars that can take away from increased productivity at what's most important to the person earning those dollars. I would be in favor of a gas tax, once again, as a last resort, but what you need to demand is efficiency from the departments that are in control of these things, and when you have totally squeezed that as tight as you can to gain those efficiencies, then you look to other funding sources. The study that you quoted said that it would take $20 billion. I think that we may have the answer for that this year. It could be that the budget surplus is sufficient for taking care of 1 year's worth of road repairs. But what's important to this district, what's important to this state, is a long-term approach. And let's look 25 years, let's look 35 years out, and how can we fix the road funding problem once and for all? I would favor a plan that, if it included a tax increase, specifically, it would be limited specifically to fuel and gas, and that the population of the state would be insulated through either an income tax rebate or some sort of property tax rebate, that the money that was generated from that tax would be isolated for roads and not touched for anything else, that the rate would be allowed to fluctuate, that the tax rate could increase or decrease based on some national measure such as gross domestic product or inflation, and that we insulate South Carolina from the states of North Carolina and Georgia, which are our neighbors, so that we don't ever tax ourselves out of competitiveness with our neighbors. I think that that's a responsible approach, and even if it does, raise a dreaded tax, that it can be explained and that it's responsible. And quite frankly, a lot of the gas that we sell here comes from our visitors from other states, and we pass it on to them, and we have better roads when they come to visit us. It helps increase tourism, and it helps increase businesses that might want to come and visit us. Thank you, Tim.
All right. Dr. Sprinkle.
A lot of similarities, a lot of differences. Excuse me. I do agree. Under no circumstance could I advocate or accept a gas tax without a corresponding decrease in our state income tax. My issue is, as far as government and taxation, when was the last time any government instituted a tax under the auspices of benefiting we the people and then said, gee folks, we have enough now, we don't need it anymore? And that's why I think it needs to be permanently linked with an income tax rate reduction, such that, as Mr. Graves said, the tourists that come here, they eat a lot of our gas. They're paying those taxes. I think that's a great thing. Every penny they pay, I don't have to. But you get to the point where you don't have enough, you need more. As Mr. Fry said, they had almost a $400 million surplus in our budget. Our budget, that's our money. That's my prime contention with government. It's not the government's money, it's the people's money. And the people deserve an answer as to where that money is going to be spent. And we went through the tail end of the legislative session and everyone was arguing and no one really came to a consensus and got anything passed, which I think is shameful. I think it's nothing short of shameful. The last plan that I saw was delegating, I believe, a third of it back to each individual county on a prorated basis. If that's the best that they can do to pass right now, well, at least that's a good start. But there's still going to be a huge deficit that's going to have to be made up. Where are you going to get that money? someone's going to suggest a new tax. It's not going to be me.
All right. Let's move on to the next question, and another thing that's already been brought up today, but talking about road projects, there has been talk about a Southern Evacuation Lifeline for years. It's one of those projects, I guess, kind of like I-73. It just gets talked a lot about, but hasn't made it off of the ground yet. Should it be a priority, and how would you pay for it? And we'll start again with you, Dr. Sprinkle, and work our way down.
Thank you. Very good question. We all had thoughts on this last night. Of course it's a good idea. You know, we live on a peninsula. We have one road coming in from the north, 501 and 17, which gets us north and south. And we all know in an emergency situation that those roads will be a parking lot. That being said, sure, the Southeastern Lifeline's a great idea, but somebody's got to pay for it. My position is this has been an ongoing idea, as you just said, Tim, I know of for at least the last 12 years. And everyone talks about it and everyone's working on it, but we hadn't made a whole lot of progress on it. The question, the bottom line, ultimately, all of us know, it's money. Where's the money? Who's going to pay for it? Again, I keep coming back to that old cliche, you can't have your cake and eat it too. At some point in time, if you want this project done, somebody has to pony up. And personally, I don't want to pay more taxes. I want to pay less taxes. We all do, all right? That being said, where's the money going to come from? We're already having trouble maintaining our existing infrastructure, which I don't think any of us would deny needs to be our top priority. So when we can get to it, you're doggone right, get to it. But we need someone in Columbia fighting to get us our share of the pie.
Sanford?
Thank you. Well, I agree that the Southern Evacuation Lifeline is extremely important to the area. I believe that the voters and the citizens of the South End are going to demand it. The particulars in how to get there are on debate. Certainly at the county level, the Ride 3 program and the committee in charge of that has allocated funds or proposed to allocate funds in order to secure right-of-ways and to do the studies necessary to make sure that that's continuing forward. However, at the state level, the money that the state had provided was vetoed and it was not overridden. So there needs to be some consensus. We need to know what the priorities are at the state level and the county level. We certainly shouldn't be working against each other, especially when we're talking $25 million and up. It is the people's money, as Dr. Sprinkle said, and we need to be responsible for this. But let's look at the roads we have. 31 is now being linked. There's going to be a nice bridge crossing the Waccamaw River. I think that's extremely important. It is a nice road, and what I really like about it is the road we have. And so let's do the most with what we have while we are planning to do more. Linking 31 to North Carolina 74, I think, is extremely important. I believe that for North Carolina has been a question for a while, but that they've made a move in order to link up. If we'll get there, they will link up with us and they'll improve their road, and we will have that emergency evacuation that is critical to our area. I'm interested in the particulars of any cell plan that comes out because I think that it's extremely important to know what the parameters are, and location and those things are extremely important. And certainly the alternatives need to be discussed, not only for fiscal reasons, but for protecting our citizens as well in the event of a storm. Thank you, Tim.
Russell Fry, Southern Evacuation Lifeline. Do we need it, and how do we pay for it?
Thank you, Tim. Absolutely. We need the Southern Evacuation Lifeline. Most of the population, or a large percentage of the population of this county, live on the South Strand. And for hurricane evacuation routes or just commuting around for businesses, it's jammed up. For those of you who live in the Burgess community, you know, on the South Strand, you know. There are a lot of tourists that come in here every year, and You can imagine a scenario where a hurricane is coming, and where do we go? Well, currently right now, depending on the category of the hurricane and where you live in District 106, you either have to travel north to Highway 544 or 501, which is already a parking lot, or you have to go south into Georgetown County, into the storm, in order to turn west. We have no direct access across the Waccamaw. So it is huge for such a highly concentrated area of the county. It is vital that we get across the waterway. It's anticipated that the price tag of the SEL project would be somewhere in the range of $700 million. But this is where creative governance can come in. I know it's being proposed that we fund part of it through RIDE 3, certainly not all of it. This is where your state legislature can come and work together to try to procure funding, and this is where, quite frankly, we can work with our federal officials too. It doesn't mean one individual or one group of government doesn't have to fund the entire thing. This is a collective effort for the safety of our residents, for our businesses, and for our tourists to come here. We need to get across that waterway in the event of a storm, and we need to have a little bit of ease of traffic concerns, and we certainly need to do that. Thank you, Tim.
All right. I want to take one more question, and then we're going to take a quick break. I want to talk about regulation now. I've talked to a lot of small business owners who complain about the amount of regulation in South Carolina. They say it's even more than some of the states that they've come from, which are up north, and kind of surprises a lot of people to think that a state as conservative as South Carolina has so many regulations. Are there too many regulations, and can you name one specifically you'd like to remove from the way of business owners? And we'll start here with Russell.
Thank you, Tim. Regulation is an important part of government, but there is far too much regulation out there. For small businesses, keeping up with the minutia, going through the red tape, it cripples their ability to make a profit. And sometimes, my dad is a small business owner, and both my parents are. And growing up, we saw that frustration. And you feel like sometimes that your government's not working with you. They're working against you. And a lot of the things just don't make sense. So regulation has become almost like a fourth branch of government, unfortunately. We don't elect the bureaucrats, though. We elect a governor, we elect our senators, and we elect our House members. But the bureaucrats that really come up with the regulations, there's really not a lot of check on them. So it's really important for your legislature and your government to check the regulators, to make sure that we are approving regulations so that we have a say, so that the people have a say. That is vital. As to any specific one, there are a ton of them out there, but I can't point to one right now.
All right.
Thank you.
Sanford.
Thank you, Tim. And I agree with Russell. Certainly, the legislature itself cannot come up with all the rules of the road for businesses, and so they've, through time, delegated them to different agencies, DHEC, and for an example, and they are entrusted with making sure safe drinking water and many things that are important to society and to in general, as well as the interests of District 106. And the oversight, I mean, they hire the directors and they entrust them with these things, but I can see how it can also go overboard. And so we need to hire directors and leadership that represent the best of our profession, while demanding that perhaps the worst of a profession is brought into standards as well. And it's a responsibility, and all of these agencies, I don't think they take their responsibilities lightly, but the importance, particularly for the legislature, would be to hire directors and to be involved in directors being hired that know what the limits are, and to ensure that their leadership yields the best regulations. And the second part of your question, I don't have one that comes to mind. Thank you, Tim.
Dr. Sprinkle.
I can give you a specific example as it pertains to my profession. Being a physician, I have to maintain strict standards, courtesy of DHEC. Yes, DHEC in our state has obvious need. However, I'm forced to comply with the same regulations that they would impose on Grand Strand Hospital or Waccamaw Hospital or Conway Medical Center. I'm just a little single practitioner office, and yet I have to adhere to the same standards. And as such, I have to procure a special DHEC license to have an x-ray machine in my office. Hey, it's great for the state. I have to pay them a couple $100 a year. I don't know, but I would hope that the bill for the hospital would be quite much higher, but I don't know that. But some of the standards that they have to adhere to in a hospital obviously would not be reflected in a single little office with one tiny little x-ray machine. Dentists have the same issue. Another one, waste management, okay? Of course, you have to deal with waste management, but because I am a medical practice, there's another medical fee, DHEC fee, makes them another couple $100. Those are just two specific examples of excess government regulation. Government bureaucracy, like these gentlemen said, it's wrought with it. And that's my whole position, is we do have too much government intruding into our lives, in every facet of our lives. I am sick of it. I don't like it, but how are we going to change it? Well, that's why the three of us are sitting here. We all think we can do it. And one of us is going to get the chance to do it. But again, one person can only do so much. You know, we've got to have somebody that convince 123 other fellows, or ladies and gentlemen, that we're right.
All right. Well, hopefully you haven't made up your mind who you're going to vote for yet, because we've got more of this debate to go. We're going to take a quick break, and what I like to call the job interview continues when we come back. Welcome back to the second half of the South Carolina House Seat 106 debate. Joining me today are the candidates for that seat, Russell Fry, Sanford Cox Graves, and Dr. Roy Sprinkle. We're going to continue on now. We'll start this question with Sanford Cox Graves. And the question is, out of the legislature recently was a bill, and it's been signed into law, that's going to require law enforcement officers to have body cameras. Think that's a good idea?
Absolutely. I think that, you know, the law enforcement concerns. I was a prosecutor for just short of 7 years in the 15th Circuit Solicitor's Office. There's often times when these individuals that we entrust our lives with, what we entrust our fortunes with, are absolutely doing their best to protect us. And situations occur, and they happen so fast that their judgment is sometimes questioned. I think it gives a reasonable opportunity for the public to see their efforts, and more along that line is that they can be judged in the context of the events as they unfold and as they occur, which may defy explanation at a later time or by other means. You know, the spoken word and the video word are two different things. You know, your TV show is going to be different than radio, and people are going to get a different impression of us, perhaps. So asking those individuals who already give so much for us to give a little more, to allow us to see how they work, how they operate in a more public manner, I think is appropriate. And I think that those folks will willingly do that for us. And it's going to be expensive. These things aren't free. So the invitation comes with a bill, and we'll be tasked with paying the bill. And but I think that recent events lean in that way, and it's appropriate.
All right. Russell Fry.
Thank you, Tim. I'm proud of the work that the legislature and the governor had in passing that bill. South Carolina was the first state in the nation to do so, and I think it really helps us from a law enforcement standpoint, and those guys that are out there on the front lines do their job effectively and protect us. We have, it helps certainly preserve evidence against any defendants that are criminally charged, and it also allows the officers, to make sure that we have all of our facts and our stories straight, so that when they hand their case off to the solicitor, where Sanford worked, that they can do their jobs effectively to make sure that the criminals that perpetrate crimes get the justice they deserve. So I'm very proud of our state. I think that was very excellent that we led the nation in that, and it's certainly a good moment for us.
All right, Dr. Sprinkle.
Excellent idea. I think every police officer, law officer should have two of them. But like Sanford says, somebody's got to pay the bill. We all have our wants. We all have, in a perfect world, what would be ideal, all right? It would be ideal if I had a swimming pool in my backyard. I can't afford a swimming pool in my backyard, so I don't have a swimming pool in my backyard. The body cameras, I think, with the light of recent events, will prove an invaluable tool to help our, God bless them, our police officers to keep us safe, which brings us to another idea, being safe. I'd like to take a moment to just say that we don't hear enough about these guys that are on the front line, and we all appreciate them, and we all need to show them,
All right. Let's move on and talk about something else the legislature did recently, and we're recording this on the Friday afternoon before the weekend it airs, and it was 1 week ago today that the Confederate flag was removed from State House grounds. And now I know that you won't be asked to vote on this because it's been done, but I think it's a bellwether of where you may stand on different issues. And start with Russell Fry on this one. What do you think about removing the Confederate battle flag? How would you have voted?
I would have voted with our governor and supported both of our United States senators and our Republican caucus to take it down. I think that given the grace and humility shown by the events in Charleston, I think that was very good. But let's be clear about something. This idea that we're going to exhume bodies in Tennessee or bulldoze the Jefferson Memorial, I think is a dangerous road that we need to be wary of. Sometimes history is uncomfortable, and it's very important that we learn from that history. I think there's a quote that aptly says, "Those who ignore history are doomed to repeat it." Each generation of Americans have left this country better than where they found it. Each generation of South Carolinians have left this state better than they found it. And it's incumbent upon us to make sure that we remember our history, which is sometimes painful, but that we remember it in a way to guide us for the future. So we need to be cognizant of that. It is a touchy subject, but one which I support the governor on.
All right. Dr. Sprinkle.
First, I would like to say that that flag, as a symbol, being hijacked by a bunch of sociopathic, racist, bigoted, hateful people disgusts me, okay? Racism, bigotry, and hatred don't need a symbol. They don't need that flag or any other flag as a symbol. They exist. That flag was installed in 1961 by our legislature. I don't think any of us had anything to do with it. It's been there since 1961. It was placed there as a memorial, all right, when they took it off the dome. Now, it was a memorial. I can understand how, since that as a symbol was hijacked by these hatred groups, that it can be offensive to some of our African American citizens and some of our Caucasian citizens as well. but you can't rewrite history. And that flag has a place in our history. We do live in the South, born and bred in the South. That being said, I respect how folks can be offended at its being hijacked as a symbol to denote racism and bigotry, and therefore they have to respect some people's opinion that's different. That means that they look at it as a reminder of our history. And if you want to talk about history, that flag, it was never a flag, it was a battle flag for the Confederation of Southern States, right? The Confederation of Southern States were a bunch of brave men and women that were standing up to our federal government, saying, doggone it, we're sick and tired of you people taking control of us. Now, I agree, the issue they were fighting for was slavery, which no sane person is going to suggest that slavery ever was a good idea or is a good idea. My God, it still happens all over the world today. In one form or another, you could look at it, we're all slaves to our overbearing federal government. So, in a nutshell, I would have to tell you that I'm a student of history and I would not have voted to bring that flag down.
All right. Sanford Cox Graves.
Thank you, Tim. I would have voted to take the flag down, and particularly the state flag, excuse me, the State House of South Carolina is the people's house, and it needs to represent the people and their interest. Now, to Dr. Sprinkle's point and Mr. Fry's point, there is a historical context, and there is a use of that flag to injure, and it becomes the symbol of an injury that members of our population just can't, it's a symbol, and I said this to you prior to, its time has passed, and it's very, very much passed on the State House grounds. A context, for a proper context for that flag might be the Fort Sumter, where the Civil War began, but they've elected to take that down in that contextual setting as well. So the thought that I have, and I shared it last night, was these symbols. There's symbols all around us that are meaningful. The sons of the Confederate veterans see that flag differently than certain members of our population, and they deserve the chance to make their points as well. But moving forward, there needs to be peace, there needs to be decency, and you should not go out of your way to injure your fellow citizens. And I think that that's what was occurring with that symbol in that location at that time.
All right. Next question, we'll start with Dr. Roy Sprinkle on this one is, well, let's get back to jobs and the economy and stuff like that. Tourism rules, as we all know, along the Grand Strand, and I've talked with each of you about this before, but let's bring it up one more time. How do you diversify your economy in District 106, or does it need to be diversified? We see growth of gun manufacturers in Aner that have come in recently, call centers in Carolina Forest. Do we need something like that happening down in District 106?
That'd be great, but my question is, where are you going to put it? We're kind of running out of room down there. It's been developed an awful lot. Obviously, our biggest business in District 106, it hinges on the beach, okay? The beach is a draw. That's what brings folks here, all right? A lot of folks come here, they visit, and then they want to buy here. That being said, real estate's big business down here. Buying it, selling it, renting it. Can you improve on it? There's an awful lot of realtors out there that can answer that better than I. I would defer that to them. But as far as overall, how could I bring more business to the state of South Carolina? By keeping our business taxes low. Last night, Russell's dad had a fantastic point, and I share his concern. My office, I pay business tax rates on that property. And it's 3 to 4 times the rate as if it's a residential property. Is that fair? Of course I don't think so. What choice do I have? That's a county issue. But as the citizens of Horry County have socked it to the tourists with all of these hospitality fees and resort fees and extra sales tax in the Myrtle Beach area and things like that, I think you have to walk a fine line, that you're going to get to the point that you're going to kill the goose that laid the golden egg, and people are going to find that there are more economical ways that they can have a vacation. So I would have to ask some more local business leaders about questions about that before I could give you any definitive answer.
Sanford Cox Graves.
Thank you. The tourism industry is our lifeblood. It's goes back to history that was the attraction. The land that we had was cheap back in the days because you couldn't farm it. Well, now we found a way to farm that land. Certainly we're farming the beach, but we're farming, and what we're growing there is guests and visitors who leave with their memories, with all sorts of things that they get from us. And we can't turn our back on that. That is the lifeblood. We need to do advertising to bring more people here and continue to grow the infrastructure that we need to continue to attract them. As far as diversification and getting into other parts of business, there are things being discussed, particularly oil exploration. The potential for a refining capacity, perhaps Georgetown would be ultimate for that, would be a very good location for that, and that would mean rigging, that would mean ships, that would mean pipelines, and they could realistically be going across our coast, going across our beaches, and perhaps even competing with tourism as a for growth and jobs. The risk is that they seem to be adverse to one another, because if you have irresponsible oil drilling or irresponsible refining, that you can injure the one single resource, the beaches and the sand that have carried us this far. So that's the one industry. Perhaps it needs to be welcomed. Perhaps it needs to be welcomed warily. But we need to make sure that the local people, particularly in House Seat 106, the district, we have a chance to express an opinion and to decide how that growth in industry, how those jobs, how the money is distributed, so that we can all benefit from it if it's coming, rather than just it show up and us not have a chance to determine our own fate anymore.
Okay.
Thank you, Tim.
Russell Fry, economic development, something different than tourism?
Absolutely. Let's not forget where our cash cow is, and that's certainly tourism. So it's very important that we protect that. We have a beautiful area on the South Strand, and really in the Grand Strand in particular, of great beaches and a lot of attractions and things that bring people here. A lot of good natural beauty and a lot of things to do. So we will always be a tourist town. We don't understand that. But if you look at the recession that we seem to be climbing out of a little bit, Charleston was not as affected. They were able to bounce back a little bit quicker than we were, and I think that's in large part due to their ability to diversify their own economy, from manufacturing, from certainly a government sector. They certainly have tourism as well. So that's important for any part of the state, and certainly important for ours as well. But how do we do that? How do we diversify an economy? It's not that Horry County is always the redheaded stepchild, it seems. Anytime that a job comes or a plant comes, we always end up being on the short end of the stick. So how do we get there? Well, we continue to try to recruit the Volvos and the Boeings. Those are important. Those are the big fish. We also need to focus on making a better business climate for our small businesses, making sure that they that their government's working for them, that they're walking them through the process, so that they don't rip their hair out trying to figure out how to comply with this or comply with that. I think that's important. Certainly keeping taxes low, as was discussed. You know, we have some of the highest industrial property taxes in the country, and that's really important if we're trying to bring somebody here. Another way that I think that we can diversify our economy, or at least set the stage, is through proper infrastructure. And we've already talked about the SEL project and the Ride 3 programs, and those are important, especially in the South Strand. But we have a port just south of us that desperately needs help. And I know that Congressman Tom Rice recently secured funding for that. But that is a great natural asset that for us on the South Strand that we can tap into for our own exports and imports. And we also need to look at you know, the possibility of an interstate. Many businesses and industries won't go where their trucks can't get to and get out of easily. And if we're trying to recruit businesses here or manufacturers here in the western part of the county or the South Strand or wherever, unless we can get an interstate access and unless we can make our roads a little bit more navigable, and unless